Bitcoin. He still called most other crypto assets securities. Is this posturing, or do you think there's a chance the SEC has changed its stance?
There's an expression about, one of the definitions of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and not expecting a different outcome. I think Gary Gensler is doing the same thing over and over again, and it thinks that somehow he's going to win in court. He has continued to lose in court. I do think the chair of the SEC, Gary Gensler, has become a political liability in the United States. And I think he's not acting in the best interest of the citizenry. He's not acting in the best interest of the long-term growth of the economy. And I don't understand it. And I think at some point, there will be a new chair of the SEC, and I think that'll be a good thing for the American people.
There were a couple of interesting things after that Bitcoin ETF was approved in that statement. One, and I paraphrase here, was effectively Gary Gensler saying, just because we allowed the Bitcoin ETF, don't think we're now going to allow a bunch of other crypto assets. The second interesting thing was the price of Ether skyrocketed immediately after, on hopes that there could now next be an ETH ETF. What are the chances of that?
I think it's a certainty.
This year?
I'm not going to put a horizon on the time, but I think there will be other ETFs for sure.
An XRP one?
There will be other ETFs for sure.
but an XRP one?
I love this game we play. Look, I am very
That's the last time I lost.
That's fine. But look, the sad part of that reality is we have a Bitcoin ETF only because a U.S. court said to the SEC, you're being arbitrary and capricious in your application of the law. What would be sad is if every ETF had to go through that same journey and for Gary Gensler to get smacked down by the U.S. court system again. That might be necessary, but again, at some point, I think Gary Gensler won't be the chair of the SEC, and that'll be a good thing for the American people.
There's what the SEC does, and then there's what is going on in Washington amongst lawmakers, and those are linked but also separate. Now, the US hasn't passed any kind of comprehensive regulation around crypto assets at this point, unlike you see in the European Union with MiCA and some of the other jurisdictions you mentioned earlier as well, Dubai. But there are a number of bills trying to make their way through the lawmaking process. One of those is around stablecoins. There's a number of others as well. Do you think that in 2024 there is the political will, given it's an election year as well, to pass some of these bills and bring them into law?
I said earlier I don't like to predict things based on time, and this one I will. I think this year there will be legislation that passes. I won't be as predictive about which one. I think likelihood is that the stablecoin, clarity for stablecoin. I can't remember the name of the bill that has been going through the system in Washington D.C. But I think we will see that in part because the U.S. Treasury wants it. Right. I mean, I think the stablecoin market has really surprised people in some ways in terms of solving a real need. And I think it only makes sense for there to be regulatory clarity around that. I think that's good for the whole industry. And, one of the things you said earlier is, are there skeletons in the closet? The stablecoin market, because there hasn't been clear rules of the road, it'll be interesting as that comes to fruition. The two primary, obviously USDT and USDC, I think they're here to stay, and I think you're going to see other entrants in that market too.
You said before that the US risks losing some of the leadership around this industry, that other countries have taken a lead, and a lot of that is due to what the SEC does and the fact there isn't clear regulation in the US. If the regulation does pass this year, if there's clearer rules for the road for the broader industry, does that help? Will the US be able to compete with some of these other jurisdictions who took an early lead in this industry?
For sure, yes. I don't think the market has passed the U.S. I think it has passing. And you are seeing, look, we have publicly shared over 70% of Ripple's hiring last year was non-U.S., despite the fact that there's still a majority of our employees in the United States. Why would we want to hire in a market where we have a hostile government? We have a government who won't provide the clarity we have asked for, where we had to fight for years and spend well over $100 million in the court system to fight them. So, there will continue to be a lot of activity, I think, in London, in Dubai, in Singapore, in some of the other, financial capitals of the world. But I think the U.S. eventually figures it out. I don't know how to predict what's going to happen in the election cycle, but no matter what, there's going to be, a shift, if you will. And I think we will see a shift at the SEC, hopefully to a new chair that is constructive and wants to work with the industry and not put their own agenda ahead of the American people's.
I've been asking you this since 2020 because that's how long it's been going on for. Ripple versus the SEC lawsuit. When do we get a conclusion?
Look, but most of it has been resolved, right? So the SEC filed a lawsuit in December of 2020, so just over 3 years ago, against me, against Chris Larson, and against Ripple. The case against Chris and Brad, myself, have been dismissed entirely with prejudice, meaning they can't ever bring it back. And the case against Ripple, they lost on everything they cared about. I mean, their primary tenet was that XRP is a security. And in the Judge Torres's opinion, what she wrote is XRP is in and of itself not a security. So I feel very good about that. The SEC then asked for approval to appeal that decision, and that was denied. So, I mean, look, the SEC has lost consistently in this case. There is a piece of the case that continues around institutional sales, because investment contracts where Ripple sold XRP to institutions who wanted to speculate. The irony there is, again, the SEC's one of their missions is to protect investors. How many of our institutional XRP sales did they lose money? None. So, what are we arguing about? Anyway, so look, that will proceed through the court system for a little bit longer, but I feel very good about where we are, and I frankly really pleased for the whole XRP ecosystem, and the whole crypto market benefited immensely from that legal win.
Just for the last 5 minutes, Brad, let's talk about Ripple, what your focus is this year, where you're going, and the future. For 2024, where are you putting your energy?
Well, a couple things come to mind there. Obviously, our core product around Ripple Payments has continued to grow, and that's something we'll continue to invest in, more payout markets around the world. We, through an acquisition, entered the custody market in 2023. Certainly a lot of our investment, our incremental new investment in 2024 will be investing in the custody business.
Is that in anticipation of sort of some of these bigger investors getting into the markets and...
Well, I mean, on one hand, I would say yes. However, there's already a tremendous amount of demand. I mean, that business is growing very quickly. We announced publicly just a month or two ago that HSBC is a new client of that business. So, these are big accounts as well as more mid-market accounts. The custody business is very real and is going to continue to grow nicely. I do think Ripple thinks about entering other vertical markets, so payments, custody. I think we'll do other things in 2024. Some of those will probably enter through acquisition. We've been super fortunate to have a very strong balance sheet at a time that the market has shifted and the valuations of a lot of these companies is not what it once was. That's been an opportunity for us, and so we're going to continue to play offense.